What is up, everyone? Call in all angels. Let's talk about last week's games, or rather, now over a week ago. Yeah, sorry about the delay in the action. I had a training that I took on since, we were going on the break anyway, so it took more time than I anticipated. But I wanted to get this one out of the way, especially since the World Cup is coming in. And so let's talk about the matches that went down most recently. I talked about Angel City's match in that recap, and I'll be doing another thing this week, going over what I feel is a priority going forward with the team, what needs to be done, and that'll be a whole thing that just periodically comes in through these weeks off as the World Cup's going through. I also might periodically do some live matches of either the World Cup or the League of Ireland, which is currently active. They are taking, I believe, a week off. Let me double check that before we go into the recaps. So according to this, the League of Ireland is back to action this week. So, yeah, there will be some League of Ireland matches. Depending on the timing, I might be able to get to that. League of Ireland women will be the week after. So, just looking at the timings here, those could be early morning experiences, but it looks like might be able to pull some off here. So, yeah, it'll at least give us something to look at since we're currently in holding pattern while the World Cup is going. But luckily, Ireland runs their league in the same setup. They run from early in the year till about November, same situation, mostly because of the weather. And so this works out. At least gives us one thing going. So Ireland not qualifying was good for something. Okay. With that said, let's zoom out of myself here. I'm going short on this because I didn't have time to put in the thing. Probably could have gone more into detail, but I wanted to get this done while I had the opening in the time frame. So, first up, we've got Orlando Pride defeating Bay FC in what was basically Barbara Banda's match here. She scored the first goal. She scored the go-ahead goal. Corey Dyke managed to get one as well, and obviously Bay managed to score an equalizer early on. But this was a game largely dominated by Orlando Pride, which kudos to them. I know it is not an easy process, but this does put Orlando back in a position where they can at least maneuver. They're up around the top 8, so they're in a much better position than Bay FC at the moment. Meanwhile, yeah, Bay FC, I've said, they're probably bottom quarter of the league, and that appears to be where they're settling in. And yeah, that's kind of what I would expect going forward. So next, yeah, as you see, I've only managed to get the goals for this one, which is why it feels so light. Denver Summit scores early in their match with Racing Louisville and just holds them off. Louisville now struggling to be consistent on offense as well, and it's turning into a team without a specialty at this stage. So at this point, I would say they're going to be fighting with Chicago for to avoid the wooden spoon. I like the team. I think there's a lot of pieces in place that could work, but stylistically, it's not clicking, and if their offense isn't going, it becomes fairly uninteresting. Denver was able to pretty much coast after the first 15 minutes of the match. So, meanwhile, Denver hanging in around that top 8. We'll see if this continues, but this is a good place to be. Not halfway into the league's season, barely past the 1/3 mark, but they are competitive, and this should be an interesting go. Once again, another relatively dull match here. We got Kansas City Current defeating Boston Legacy 1-0. Once again, it's Temwa Chawinga scoring in the 69th minute of the match. She is currently the number 2 in terms of goal scoring. If Barbara Banda is the kingpin here, then that next row right behind would be Temwa Chawinga and another person from North Carolina who we'll talk about when Angel City comes up. But for the time being, Kansas City looks back to form. They're back in the top 6. I don't know how serious they're going to be as far as threatening for the top. I would suspect this year the Shield is not going to be to them. I don't think they're as complete of a team, but they've at least elevated themselves again that they will be back in the discussion for home playoff matches, and that's really what you got to hope for. Moving forward, we've got what was the match of the week at that time. Portland Thorns, Utah Royals, up. 2 teams at that point were first and second in the league, and both teams jockeying for it, and as you would expect, turned into a classic. Utah actually blew their chance at taking over really cleanly on Portland with a definitive win. After giving up the goal to Olivia Moultrie, they reeled off 2 fairly close together. Kiana Palacios scores right before halftime, Chloe Lacasse right after halftime, and it looks like it's going to be there, and then giving up a penalty right as timing is ending and they go into injury time. Sophia Wilson drills it, and Portland is able to salvage a point from all this, which when you're competing for the Shield, it's going to be a game of inches right now because it is tight at the top. We're going to go over that in a little bit here once I've gone through all the matches. But quality matchups here. I still think there's some holes in Portland, and they almost very nearly did them in here. But Utah is showing something here. I'm interested in seeing where they go in this after this break concludes. Another team who's in that boat is Washington Spirit, who came away with a 2-1 win over Seattle, who continues to struggle mightily. This ended up being a 2-1 match, but Washington ended up scoring technically all 3 goals, as an own goal near halftime is what equalized the match for Seattle. And it almost led to them stealing a point until Hal Hirschfeld managed a goal in the last 10 of regular time. Also credit to Lacey Santos for the early goal there. But Washington, another one of those teams that's up in that top 6. We talked about a few of them there so far. We talked about Portland. We talked about Utah. We talked about Kansas City. Washington, I would say, is the one I'm crediting as probably the odds-on favorite long term, but I could be very wrong on that. Their start was definitely slow, and we will see going forward. Moving on, this match bothered me. So, Chicago Stars hosting San Diego Wave. The Wave are another team in that top 6, and they earned their 3, but something was definitely off and unfortunate here. The problem was the Wave scored almost immediately. Dadinia, 3rd minute. That's fine. But right as injury time is starting, Chicago manages to score. I remember, because I was watching this live, it looked good. VAR basically says it's a hair's breadth ahead, and VAR takes the goal away. And obviously, they spent a lot of emotional credit on that. So they were a little bit more flat, and over the course of a very long injury time, Trinity Byers gets a second goal for them. And to me, it feels like a lot in this championship chase is going to be swung on this because that is 2 points San Diego gained that they otherwise wouldn't have. This could be a very important match if this ends up being a very tight race for the Shield or just seeding for the Cup playoff in general. Just remember these 2 points. Remember right on the last weekend of May that San Diego getting 3 instead of 1, that might have been a difference maker. Also around that time on Sunday, we had Gotham FC getting a 1-0 win over Houston with a very early goal. And then Gotham does their Gotham things. 1 goal is enough. But they are also in that top 6. They're playing strong. They're playing stable. As far as being Cup champions go, so far you have your Shield and your Cup winner basically in identical positions. I don't think either of them claims the Shield this year, but they are both very quality opponents. They are going to be a challenge for any of these other teams in that top 6. Meanwhile, Houston, I think, has fallen to earth. They are going to be an outsider within the playoff picture. Their ceiling has been pretty well founded, unless they can make some moves here over this break. And speaking of needing to make some moves over the break, okay, so this one is full on because I already had it made from when I went over Angel City. This was a very unfortunate match for Angel City. Another late goal. This one, Monica Matsukubo, who had gotten an assist on the first goal of the game, ends up with a goal in the last 15. The last 15 minutes have turned into the nightmare time if you are an Angel City fan. You do not know what to expect once that goes in other than just late shenanigans. And honestly, I think it's going to get... It's the stuff that is going to lead to conversations long run. I'm going to talk about this quite a bit, like the absolutely abhorrent play in the last 15 of matches, the inability to finish. And it's problems in the first 75 minutes that are finally paying off at the end there. So a lot of conversations need to be had. I will talk a little bit about what I had heard from the players after that game had concluded. There is a lot. But, yeah, let's focus a little bit on North Carolina, though, because... As I said, Asher Sanchez is another one of the top goal scorers. Wasn't a factor in the actual score line here, but always someone to fixate on, and Angel City had to do that here. And North Carolina is right now, this was a match to decide a team that was going to be in the top 8 going into the break, and Angel City had their chance. They blew that. North Carolina took advantage. They're finally doing stuff that I'd expected them to do, and right now, if you had told me to project out which teams would be top 8, I would say that 7 of them are basically where I expected them to be. I had hopes that Angel City would occupy the 8th spot in some of the part of the order, but a lot needs to change here, especially in regards to how they play the game late. All right, so... With that said, let me zoom back into myself, and we'll talk about where everyone is positioned here. All right. So in terms of the standings, San Diego Wave basically took advantage of the draw that Utah and Portland had. So San Diego now sits atop the league at 25 points. Utah Royals is a point behind them at 24, and so is Portland. However, San Diego and Portland have each played 13 matches to Utah's 12, meaning Utah has a match in hand, and points per match, they're actually ahead. So if Utah was to, and right now with a superior goal differential, if Utah registered any points in that match in hand, they would go ahead of San Diego. If they were outright win it, also true there. Then we have a 3-way tie for 4th. Washington Spirit, Gotham FC, and Kansas City Current all sitting at 21 points each. So in this situation, Washington holds the edge for a goal differential of +9. Gotham is at +7. Kansas City is now at +1. And so that pretty much settles you in as the 4 through 6. I feel like right now those are legitimate playoff teams. That said, of the three, I think Washington is the only one that has a real shot at the Shield. They're 4 points out of it right now, but they appear to have caught some fire. We'll see after this break who's actually playing hot. But Washington actually has the most matches in hand at 11, as does Gotham, to be fair. So if they were to claim both of them, they would be even with Utah, but only have an advantage of 1 goal in the differential. So it would depend on margin of victory in those matches versus Utah's single match. So as of right now, I would say that top 5 is fairly compelling. Kansas City's already played 12 and has a very low goal differential advantage of +1. So Kansas City, I think, is the worst of the 6 at the moment, but they do have a ceiling we know they can reach, and I still say Portland has some stylistic limitations of the 3 that are up in the top 3 right now. I would say Portland is the weakest and the most likely to falter. And that's basically top 6. The last 2 playoff spots, North Carolina has reclaimed their spot in the mix at 18 points. They sit in 7th. And then in 8th, holding the last spot, is the Orlando Pride at 17 points. North Carolina's victory put them ahead. Likewise, had Angel City managed to win their match, they would have been at 16 and been 1 point behind Orlando instead of 1 ahead. But as it stands, North Carolina, I do think, is playing top 8, fringe top 8, but they are absolutely deserving of their position. And Orlando is very much relying on those 11 goals from Barbara Banda to cling to this position. Denver Summit are 2 points behind them with a better goal differential, and a match in hand. So they're breathing down their necks. Seattle Reign are 3 points back with a match in hand. Houston Dash are 3 points, no match in hand. And Angel City is 4 back with a match in hand. So in terms of Orlando, they've got the next 4 teams very much chasing them. Denver, untested because their expansion. Seattle, very poor goal differential and some rough performances. Houston, I do think, is starting to reach their max. And Angel City, very much in need of some major fixes if they're going to make a real challenge here. The season is not half over yet, so all 4 should definitely feel like they have a chance at knocking off Orlando. They're a very vulnerable team. And North Carolina has proven they're inconsistent. So there is definitely room to move into this playoff picture. But those are the challengers at the moment. In terms of the bottom quarter, they're exactly who I figured. You've got Bay at 11. You've got Boston at 9 with a superior goal differential. So credit to them. Playing in low-scoring matches has gotten them out of the bottom 2. Chicago also at 9. Louisville at 7. We'll see if Louisville can make a little bit of a move here. But as it stands right now, we've got a very interesting lower quarter, I think. Only 4 points separate them. I'm curious to see if Louisville can put something together to at least avoid the wooden spoon here. But we shall find out on that. In terms of matches, what is coming up is the Challenge Cup between Kansas City and Gotham will be occurring in late June. So that'll be a match that I will be trying to live. So we will follow that, assuming it is on a channel I can pull easily. That is a big if. That's always a problem. But once we get into the real matches, that weekend of July 4th, we've got on July 3rd, Washington hosting Houston. Denver hosting Kansas City, a very important match in terms of where these teams are sitting. Orlando going to Angel City. As of right now, this might be one I live. Not live here, I mean go to live. So there is a chance that I will not be available for that one. And if anything, we might have to settle for a July 5th match as an actual live because I'll be heading back. On July 4th, there are two matches. North Carolina hosting Seattle. Again, you've got a challenger trying to go for that playoff position. And then you have a Titanic matchup as San Diego hosts Gotham. Two of the top six going at it. And then on July 5th, Boston Legacy will be hosting Bay. And Bay FC, again, trying to stay ahead of them. This could be one where Boston pulls themselves into 13th. Chicago is going to host Utah in what should be a walkthrough for Utah Royals, but we'll see. Maybe the Stars have come up with something on this time off. And then lastly, Portland will be hosting Louisville. Again, this is one of those styles that actually kind of plays into Portland's hands if they can avoid the actual goals, because Louisville is aggressive, which allows Portland's style to turn things on them, but we shall see on that. As I said, this is a bit of a longer one, and you can kind of see it here. This video is covering both recaps and previews because we've got a lot going on here. Over the next few days, I will be talking more Angel City. The fixation is going to be a lot more Angel City focused, and we'll also be talking. There'll be some videos on league leaders, videos on the transactions that are happening during this time. Possibly we'll actually do a proper power ranking, though I feel like you've got a pretty good idea of where I think all these teams stand as is, just based on how I talk about them. But it could happen. We shall see. For now, enjoy the upcoming World Cup. I will have a World Cup preview. I will be going over that stuff here. It'll be going up on Thursday before the first match, and I'll make my official picks. So look forward to that. Enjoy if you're watching. Otherwise, enjoy some League of Ireland. If nothing, enjoy waiting for the NWSL to come back. Either way, enjoy whatever soccer experience you're going to have. Go Angels!